This world has plenty of expensive baubles and trinkets. What's your most expensive? I mean, precious.
One of my guitars.
One of your guitars, okay? Here are some actual things that people own that they probably consider to be precious possessions. You're looking at a gold-plated, diamond-studded iPhone. The cost is $2.97 million. $3 million for a phone. And it's only 3G. Or you can own the world's most expensive television set. Prestige HD Supreme Rose Edition. The outer frame is gold with diamonds. The inner frame is alligator skin. $2.3 million. It's only a 55-inch. 55-inch. Or for you ladies who like purses, that's a Hermes Birkin handbag. Prices start at $10,000. Or you can buy one with gold and diamonds, and that one runs $1.9 million. I cannot. But this one blows me away. If you are an art lover, that is a Jackson Pollock called Painting Number 5, $140 million. It is 4x8. You know what else is 4x8? A sheet of plywood. That's what this is painted on, plywood. Somebody scattered a bunch of paint. It's not, I mean, it's an abstract for those on the video. It's not even a picture of anything. It's just paint squiggled around. $140 million. It looks like a practice sheet.
Is it for sale or did somebody buy it?
I think it is, I think it was auctioned off for that. These items have to be cherished possessions, right? I mean, if you're going to spill out millions for something, it must be a precious possession.
Probably not.
Probably not. What is your most precious possession? I did. Yes, I can see the red light. It's on. Yes, sir.
My wife only cost $6 million.
Oh, there you go. Your wife only cost $6 million. She is your most precious. On Amazon. Your most precious possession, all joking aside, is not a thing. What is it? Salvation. It's your soul. According to the words of Jesus, your most precious possession, Matthew 16 and verse 26, for what is a man profited if he gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Your soul is infinitely worth more than any other possession that you might have. More than anything or anyone. It will last when the sun and the moon have both gone cold and dark. Your soul will exist when the entire universe is gone and replaced by a new heaven and a new earth. Your soul is worth more than all the banks and the Fortune 500 corporations combined. It's worth all the stocks, bonds, silver, diamonds, gas, gold, whatever else in the world. None of it can compare to your soul. Your soul will go on for all eternity. Those things will all end. They will all cease to exist. Your soul is timeless. Physical items are not. They are temporary. It's a truth that's too important to miss. So let's read. We have come to Mark chapter 8, beginning with verse 27. don't have it on the screen. It's too long of a text. So get your Bible. Open up to Mark chapter 8. I'll have the individual passages on the screen momentarily, but I think anyway. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I don't remember. Mark 8, beginning with verse 27. And Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. And on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they told him, "John the Baptist. And others say Elijah, and others one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Christ." By the word, anytime you see the word Christ, you need to pencil in another word. What is it? Messiah. That's what the word Christ means. It's not Jesus' last name. It's a title. It means anointed one. It means Messiah. So you can pencil that in. Peter is saying, you are the Messiah. You're the Christ. And he strictly charged them to tell no one about him. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man, by the way, you circle that, that's a phrase in Daniel that also refers to the Messiah. So he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he said this plainly. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. You need to circle that part too. What did Peter do?
Corrected him.
Took Jesus aside to correct him. But turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter. Backfired. So Jesus is now rebuking Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." And calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? For whoever is ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." This message is about discipleship. What is a real disciple? That's what we're asking this morning. Again, if you have your phone, go to the Bible app, YouVersion. Go down there to the hamburger menu, select that. Go to Events, select that. Or put in the search Heron Church of Christ, Heron, Illinois, for those watching on video that may not be close. And the outline for this class is there. We're talking about discipleship. Jesus has an interesting interaction with his disciples, especially Simon Peter. And he gives us the steps of discipleship. Now, we throw the word disciple around a lot. We talk about it a lot, but really we may not really understand what it means. The best translation of the New Testament word is what? Follower? Anybody else? Pupil. Not your eye. You're a student. You're a follower. You are the disciple of a rabbi. You are the student of a teacher. That's saying the exact same thing. It captures the idea of being a lifelong student, not just a temporary follower or student. It doesn't mean you follow him one day a week. It doesn't mean you follow him for a few weeks. It's a 24/7 lifelong commitment. You are his student all the time. Jesus doesn't call us to just believe either. He calls us to be His disciple, His student, His follower. And beyond that, He calls us to be disciple makers. We are to call others to follow, not us, but Him, but follow along with us. You can't be a disciple maker unless you are truly a disciple first. So Jesus reveals 5 basic steps that a disciple takes. Time permitting, we'll get all 5. All 5 are in the study notes. Step 1, believe and confess that Jesus is Lord. Jesus is asking His disciples, who do you say that I am? See if, no, I don't have it up there. Who do you say I am? And Peter, who usually said the wrong thing, actually got it right for once. What did he say? You are the Christ. You are the Messiah. You are the anointed one. He got it right. Now, this is about midway through the 3-year ministry of Jesus. He usually has been pursued by a mob of people that want to be healed, that want to be fed miraculously, that want to see a sign. So Jesus and the 12 escape on a retreat. They have gone to a northern city, way up north, on top of the Sea of Galilee, called Caesarea Philippi. It's a pagan city. It's a Roman city. It has a temple there dedicated to a half-man, half-goat creature known as Pan, or Pan, if you want to be American about it. Yes, the little flute-like instrument named after him. He was supposedly roaming the hillsides there in Caesarea Philippi, playing that flute. You can't see that picture very well. It's kind of a beastly-looking guy with goat horns. Not an original picture. That's an artist's rendition, of course. But this half-man, half-goat was worshipped in Caesarea Philippi, and a huge spring gushed out of a cave in the side of a massive mountain. Those of you that were in the geography class, we talked about this. A temple was built over that cave. That is another artist's rendition of the temple, and that is, it's basically covering up the hole, the entrance of the cave into that mountain. And there is a huge spring inside there, and it gushes out of there. And I'll show you another picture in just a moment. It was known as, take a guess, the gates of Hades. That entrance to that temple was known as the gate of Hades. Human sacrifice was practiced there. That is a picture, even today, the spring is still gushing and produces quite a bit of water. And that's the actual entrance to the cave. In case you can't see it right up here, there's a dark space. This is where this temple was built, over the mouth of that cave. But the water just comes rushing out of there. Human sacrifice is practiced there. It's a wicked city. Many scholars believe Jesus visits the area because he knows there aren't any Jews there. I can go in some, almost like a celebrity trying to get away from the crowds. You can go somewhere where nobody knows you. That's kind of what Jesus and his disciples were doing, looking for an escape. And this is a time for Jesus to evaluate. Not sure what that's about. It might be God getting angry. Maybe he doesn't like me talking about the gates of Hades. I don't know. Or Satan. Yeah. This is a time for Jesus to evaluate where they've been, where they're going, where are they headed. And in the way of review, he asked his disciples, hey, what are people saying about me? It's just, you've got your ear to the ground. You hear what people are saying. What do they say about me? Some of the disciples speak up and They say, well, some say you're John the Baptist, others say you're Elijah, others say you're one of the prophets. They probably had a good laugh because they know that's not who Jesus is. But then Jesus says, but who do you say that I am? And I think he got deadly quiet. It's not enough for us to say, well, my parents say you're the Son of God. You won't be able to get by saying, well, my preacher says you're the only way to heaven. You've got to answer the question yourself. Jesus is asking, who do you say that I am? Have you believed and confessed that Jesus is Lord? Romans 10, 9 and 10, if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it's with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved. Now, since the beginning of the church in the book of Acts, the point at which believers have made that confession is at baptism. This became a countercultural revolution as Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire. Every year a Roman citizen is required to pay an annual tax. Don't you hate that? They have to pay their annual tax. And they must confess Kaiser estin kurios, which means Caesar is Lord. So you take your tax, you pay it, and you confess Caesar is Lord. And what does Lord mean? Master. It means I'm your servant, your slave. Caesar, you're my Lord, you're my master, I am your servant. But these radical Christians, these disciples of Jesus, refused to say that and instead said, Iosos estin kurios, which meant Jesus is Lord. And they made that confession at the point of which they were baptized. Whenever I've had the joy of baptizing someone, I usually ask, do you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God? Do you believe he is the Messiah? Do you believe he is who he says he is? And so far, without fail, every single one of them have said, yes, I believe he is the Son of God. That's the first step of discipleship, making that confession. But there are other steps as you grow as a Christian. Step 2. You have to remove your ego from the throne of your life. Self sits on the throne. Jesus said something pretty unexpected to Peter. What did he say when he rebuked him? Get behind me, Satan. You don't have in mind the things of God, but the things of men. And then Jesus explains the true mark of a disciple. Verse 33 and 34, what did he say? When Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple," this is a defining mark. You want to be my disciple? This is what you have to do. What is it? Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. So after Peter makes his powerful confession, you are the Christ, he was probably feeling pretty good about himself, right? He got the answer right for once. He became proud Peter. And while he's busy patting himself on the back, Jesus begins to tell the disciples the schedule for the rest of his ministry. He tells them, and we're going to make our way to Jerusalem. What's going to happen? They're going to kill me. They're going to bury me. But after 3 days, I will rise again. I'm going to suffer greatly. And I'll be rejected by the Jewish leaders. They're going to kill me. And proud Peter didn't want to hear anything about failure. He didn't want to hear anything about suffering. He is on the winning team, not the losing team. He's the right-hand man of the Messiah. That meant riches. It meant honor. It meant place of glory. So Peter takes Jesus aside and begins to rebuke him. Now, Lord, don't talk like that. They're not going to treat you that way. Not while I'm there. Picture this big fisherman. He's rebuking the Son of the living God. No more silly talk about dying. We've got a good thing going. We're going to win big. And that deserved real rebuke. And in front of the other disciples, Jesus looks at him and says, "Get behind me, Satan. You're thinking like a man, not God." Simon Peter is full of selfish pride. His ego is in charge. Jesus says, you can never be my disciple unless you deny yourself. That doesn't mean deny yourself of something like sweets. Okay, I'm going to quit eating sweets. That'll make me a Christian. It doesn't mean I'll deny myself of sleep. I'll study more. Not what it's talking about. It means you deny yourself, your ego. The big I. Me. We are sinners. Our human nature makes us self-centered and selfish. We put the big I at the center of our own little universe, and everything revolves around me and my ego and my pride. Imagine, if you will, a circle. Draw it on your paper if you got a pencil. Draw a circle. And in the middle of that circle is your life. In the very middle of it, put a throne. Okay, now you got to have a big circle, okay? Draw a throne in there in the middle. In a self-directed life, you have the big S on the throne. You have self, or the big E, ego, whatever you want to call it. Christ is in your life, but he's not calling the shots. You are. And you can put other smaller circles in there too. Other things that hold your attention, capture your interest. Really, everything's out of balance. Some characteristics of a self-directed life: a legalistic attitude, impure thoughts, worry, discouragement, frustration. I know, I'm preaching to me or teaching about me too. All of those things mean it's all out of whack. In the life of a self-centered person, it's all about me. It's about what I think, what I feel. A disciple of Jesus says, it's not about me. It's about Jesus. What does He think? What does He feel? What does He want me to do? Say that with me. It's not about me, it's about Jesus. Say it with me. It's not about me, it's about Jesus. That's step 2. You got to get ego off the throne. Step 3. You have to visualize your ego as dead. Jesus gave us the next step. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and do what? Take up their cross. A person carrying a cross only has one destination. What is it? Death. It's a one-way trip. For you to take up a cross doesn't mean you carry a cross in your pocket or wear one around your neck. Other people think their cross to bear is some kind of physical ailment. You know, I've heard people complain about their diabetes or their arthritis. Oh, I guess it's just my cross I'll have to bear. Jesus isn't talking about aches and pains. He's talking about dying. Not physical death. What kind of death? Death of self. Ego is going to be nailed to that cross. You, your ego, your selfishness, yourself is what's dying on this cross. And after you deny self, you have to constantly subject self to death over and over and over and over, because we keep resurrecting self, which means we really didn't kill self to begin with, doesn't it? In Luke's account, Jesus says, take up your cross how often? Daily. In Luke's account, he adds the word daily. It's not a one-time action. You have to do this every day. Since all our sins are nailed to Jesus' cross, since our ego is nailed to our cross, well, look at Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives where? In me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I can't even read that without singing the song in my head. Did you ever learn the song? I've been crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. That's how our teachers used to teach us memory verses. I don't sing well, but I still remember it. I don't think I'll ever forget that, Galatians 2:20. And for years, that was just a verse I quoted or sang. But I didn't really get it. It was so unclear. It was so spiritual, so deep, so above me. I couldn't sink my teeth into it. It was like trying to chew Cool Whip. Can't do it. But then one day, God gave me insight into how I could apply this in a very practical way. It's so simple, I almost missed it. There really was someone who was literally crucified with Christ. I have been crucified with Christ. There was someone who was crucified with Christ, right? Two someones. But one of them we'll get to meet in heaven. Right? Because he said, today you will be with me in paradise. The thief on the cross, as he hung there, he knew his life was about to end. He looked over at Jesus. Jesus is bleeding and dying as well. And the last thing Jesus looked like was a king. He did not look like a king at all. But the thief said, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. He recognized him as a king. And that simple profession of faith was enough. Because Jesus said, today you will be with me in paradise. When we were crucified with Christ, and I've got it as a beautiful picture, standing there in the baptistry, in the waters of the watery grave of baptism, it's known as. You're standing there about to die to self. You're like that thief. He no longer cared about what people thought about him. His ego was gone. His pride was gone. People could have yelled, "You're ugly and stupid." He wouldn't have cared. It's the last thing on his mind. Didn't bother him. He was crucified with Christ, literally. He didn't fear arousing the wrath of the Romans for talking to Jesus. What else could they do to him except send him on to paradise quicker? He didn't care what they thought, what they did. He was crucified with Christ. Now imagine, while he's being crucified with Christ, a well-known prostitute walks by. Do you think he's interested in looking at her? Hanging on a cross, about to die. Do you think he cares at all about her? Not even a little bit. He's crucified with Christ. Imagine a Roman centurion driving up in the latest model of a sporty chariot. 8 horsepower, dual slaves. You think he thought, man, I'd sure like to have that. Last thing on his mind, right? He has been crucified with Christ. Imagine a wealthy Sadducee standing there with a velvet prayer shawl. You think that thief yelled out, "Hey Simon, where can I get me one of those outfits?" Last thing on his mind. He was crucified with Christ. None of those things mattered to him. The only thing that mattered was what? His soul. Put yourself on that cross with Jesus. Look into his eyes, and you lose the desire for anything that would take away your soul. Now, again, it's not that you have to do it every day. You can't do it once. It's a daily task. So that's step 3. Death to self. Step 4. Now you've got to put Jesus on the throne and obey him. Verse 34. You want to be my disciple? Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. To follow Jesus means wherever he leads, that's where I go. One time my kids and I were walking on the beach out in Texas. And I happened to look back and I saw them both with their heads down, stepping in my footprints. So I got a little mean. I started making big footprints, long stretches. And I started going like in circles. And they finally caught on. They tried to match my steps. And by the way, moms and dads, grandparents, you're making tracks for your children and they will walk in your footsteps. Following Jesus means walking in his footsteps wherever he leads. It doesn't mean you have to live a perfect life as a disciple. That's impossible. Nobody can do that. But you desire to follow him. You're trying to step where he steps, to go where he goes. It means a will to choose obeying him in every aspect of your life. God is able to judge us on the basis of our desire and our direction rather than our actual performance. He judges the heart, not actually what I did. So now, if you still have that first circle, draw another circle beside it. Represents your life. But in this picture, self is no longer on the throne. Jesus is. Now all your various interests, they're in balance. Because Jesus is on the throne, He takes up the biggest part. Everything else falls behind. The characteristics of a Christ-directed life are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, the fruit of the Spirit. It's a life empowered by the Holy Spirit. Does that represent your life? Because that's what it means to be a real disciple. Step 5. I've only got about 2 minutes. Step 5. Don't waste your life. Instead, lose yourself. Jesus often spoke in parables, in paradox. This is one of those paradoxical statements. On the surface, it seems contradictory, but when you dig below the surface, you see the truth. For whoever would save his life, verse 35, whoever will save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? You want to save your life, live for self. Put yourself on the throne. But you will lose it, he says. You'll waste it with self on the throne. But whoever loses his life, that is, puts Jesus on the throne, dies to self and puts Jesus on the throne, whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. But you'll have it for all eternity. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world yet forfeit his soul? A lot of people don't even know they have a soul. I asked Google. I said, okay, Google. Did your phone just come on? I said, okay, Google, do you have a soul? Did it answer?
I shut it off.
You turned it off? Mine said, I've never really thought about it. That's probably true of most humans. I've never really thought about it. Your soul is the real you. It lives inside your body. Jesus has told us, love God with all your being, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind.
Mine said, I'll have to ask the engineers.
I have to ask the engineers. I don't know that they know either. Are you a disciple of Jesus? Are you a follower, a student of Jesus? Before you say that quick yes, go through those characteristics. Have you denied yourself, taken up your cross, and do you follow Him daily? Let that be the answer. Not just a quick, simple yes. Do you believe and have confessed that Jesus is Lord? Are you willing to lose yourself in God's great cause? You know who this is? Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German preacher of a generation past. He knew a thing or two about discipleship. He wrote a classic book entitled The Cost of Discipleship. In that book, he says, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. Well, he was talking about dying to self. But Bonhoeffer came to understand that denying self and taking up a cross sometimes leads to physical death. From the beginning of Hitler's rule in Germany, Bonhoeffer publicly opposed him at every step. Hitler used the German church to spread his message of Aryan supremacy. And he hated the Jews, of course, and he used the church to spread that hate. Bonhoeffer was a part of a small splinter group. They called themselves the Confessing Church. They saw Hitler as evil. Hitler was called Der Führer, means the leader. Bonhoeffer is speaking on the radio in Berlin. He said there can be only one Führer for Christians. It is not Adolf Hitler. It is Jesus Christ. He didn't even get to finish the radio address before they stormed in and arrested him. He was part of several attempts to have Hitler assassinated. Bit of an extremist. 3 weeks before the war in Germany ended, April 9, 1945, about 70 years ago, Bonhoeffer was led out of the prison with several other prisoners, ordered to strip naked, led to the gallows to be hung. A physician claimed to witness this death, and he later said, "I saw Bonhoeffer kneeling on the floor, praying fervently to God. I was most deeply moved by the way this lovable man prayed, so devout, so certain that God heard his prayer. At the place of execution, he again said a short prayer, then climbed a few steps to the gallows, brave and composed. His death ensued after a few seconds. In the almost 50 years that I worked as a doctor, I have hardly seen a man die so entirely submissive to the will of God." In Bonhoeffer's last letter to a friend in England, he said, "This is the end, but for me, this is the beginning." I don't know, I'm not telling you have to agree with everything that Dietrich Bonhoeffer taught, but boy, that's the attitude, at least, of a disciple. Thank you for attending class today. We'll take a short break, and we'll gather in the auditorium for our worship service in just a few minutes.